Hey, Steve Mignani here, and this is show number 62 of the Steve Maggs Muscle Car Show podcast. We've been off the grid a little bit, just been busy with Barrett-Jackson Scottsdale 2022, but we're back. And if you haven't tuned in before, well, this is basically where I read from my book, Steve Mignani's 1001 Muscle Car Facts. This book came out, back in 2013, so gosh, 9 years ago, as I write this or speak this now in 2022. But what I do in this program, this podcast, is basically I read from this book, and we've already covered Chevrolet, Pontiac, Olds, Buick, Ford, Mercury, Dodge, Plymouth, Chrysler, and now with fact 851 of 1001, we enter the world of American Motors, AMC, Detroit's fourth automaker, if you will. And of course, after AMC will come Studebaker. Yep, we're going to cover Studebaker toward the end of our 1001 facts. Studebaker and AMC both had worthwhile muscle car additions or contributions, although Studebaker was pretty much all done after 1964 or 65, and for performance purposes, after 63, the supercharged stuff went away. But anyway, with that said, American Motors had lots to do with the muscle car era. So, without further ado, let us now begin. This is going to be Legend and Lore, that subchapter of the American Motors chapter of the Steve Maggs Muscle Car Show podcast. And I got to say, this whole thing is brought to you by High Octane Classics in Auburn, Massachusetts, a huge dealership that deals in special interest, muscle, and any kind of collectible vehicle for the most part, four wheels, even some motorcycle stuff. But again, here in Auburn, Massachusetts at 143 Washington Street, you can call them at 508-859-4515. And of course, I also do a lot of videos here, the muscle car crawls at High Octane Classics. So again, I have a lot to do with these guys. They're a great dealership if you're looking to buy or even sell a muscle car or special interest or classic from a Ford or a Ferrari. High Octane Classics is involved. In S, they also have some AMC products. So let's begin. Okay, AMC Legend and Lore. This is fact number 851. Forget about the 1968 AMX. Rambler beat Corvette to the hot post-World War II two-seat sports car market by more than 2 years. The car was the 1951 through 54 Nash Healey, a European-designed and built Sportster with the heart of a 140 horsepower twin-carb Nash Statesman overhead valve six-cylinder engine. First introduced on February 16, 1951, by the time the first Corvette emerged from GM's makeshift Flint, Michigan assembly plant on June 30, 1953, 2 years later, nearly 300 Nash Healeys had been built. Of them, 134 were built in 1951, 150 in 1952, 162 in 1953, and 90 in 1954. The Nash Healey's primary downfall was its price. At just under $6,000, it cost twice as much as a Corvette, and that's back in the 50s. The 1951 through 54 Nash Healey sports car heavily influenced the 55 Thunderbird and demonstrated to Carroll Shelby the efficiency of teaming a lightweight European chassis and potent American drivetrain. So yeah, it's true. American Motors, by way of the Nash Healey, beat the two-seat AMX, which was also a two-seater of 1968 through 70, by 10, 15 years. So American Motors was certainly in there at the beginning of the muscle car era, and even before it, with high-performance specialty cars, the Nash Healey being one of the first. Okay, let's move on. Legend and Lore, American Motors style with fact 852. This is AMC Marlin data. Okay, had the mid-size Marlin of 1965 through 66, which rode on a 112-inch wheelbase, been built on the compact Rambler American platform, which had a 106-inch wheelbase, as was AMC styling chief Dick Teague's original intent, it would likely have appealed to Mustang and Barracuda buyers and sold in far greater numbers. In fact, the production Marlin's fastback roofline was borrowed directly from the Tarpon, a one-off 1964 Rambler American show car. The Teague left his studio for a family vacation in Europe. While gone, American Motors president Roy Abernathy mandated the roof treatment be transferred to the larger classic body platform, with awkward results. In its first year, the oddly proportioned Marlin sold 10,327 units compared to 77,079 Mustang 2+2 fastbacks. Marlin sales tumbled 56% in 1966 to just 4,547 versus Mustang's 35,698 fastbacks. Hoping to reverse the slide, a misguided decision was made to transfer the Marlin to the full-sized Ambassador chassis, going to a 108-inch wheelbase from 112, so another 6 inches. Which further highlighted the controversial styling. Sales dropped to just 2,545 units before the plug was pulled on the 1967 Marlin. It makes you wonder how things would have gone had Teague stayed home. And again, Dick Teague was the stylist in charge of a lot of American Motors vehicle designs in the 60s and into the early 70s. And again, the Rambler American, that little tiny compact Rambler American, was the car that Teague initially thought would make a nice fastback. In other words, the Tarpon show car of 1964. If you Google AMC Tarpon show car, you'll see it's basically a small, almost a Falcon-sized car with a fastback roof. In other words, it would have been a very direct competitor to the Ford Mustang 2+2 fastback, which was also based on a Falcon. But again, American Motors made the boo-boo of taking that fastback roof and awkwardly putting it on the mid-sized Classic, and then after that on the full-sized Ambassador. So, you know, the fastback Marlin idea was great on paper, but didn't really work out at all in the showroom. Okay, moving along, let's talk about some cop car history with fact 853. AMC fans watching the 1968 through 75 Adam 12 TV cop show initially endured the sight of officers Mallory and Reed tooling the streets of Los Angeles in a series of 383-powered Plymouth Belvedere and Satellite squad cars. But with the 1972 season, a 401 V8 Matador arrived and was used through the end of the series. My then 8-year-old eyes were attracted to the bright red 401 fender emblems and down-jutting twin tailpipes like magnets. The switch mirrored the LAPD's real-life use of 401 Matador squad cars from 1972 through 75. Yeah, I was born in 1964, so as a 10-year-old kid, I'm watching reruns of Adam 12. And it is true, the earliest episodes show a really cool 4-door Roadrunner, basically a 68 Belvedere cop car. 4 doors, black and white, 383 dual exhaust, torque flight automatic. But again, for 1972 or thereabouts, the AMC 401 Matador replaced the Mopar, and from thereafter you'll see the 401 emblems on the front fenders. But in many cases, those cars were crashed on camera for excitement in the episodes, and my heart always kind of broke when I saw the car flip over with the dual exhaust, smoking. And but again, those 401 Matadors were very, very powerful and successful cop cars. Try to find them today; they're very rare. They all got used up and spat out. Okay, let's move on to more television info with fact 854. An odd scene from the 1979 ABC made-for-television movie Hot Rod shows the theft of an AMC Matador police car. The aim was to yank its high-performance engine for use in the hero's Willis gasser drag machine. So far, so good. The big surprise is that the scene depicts a Mopar 426 Hemi being extracted from the Matador's engine bay. What, a 401 wasn't good enough? Well, here's the crazy thing. That show is called Hot Rod, also I think known as A Small Town in Texas. Features the Munns Root Beer, the son of the owner with this 442 Oldsmobile. And this guy comes into town driving a Willis. Well, he gets crashed and stuff, so they yank a motor out of a cop car. And again, one of those big themes is that any cop car is a high-performance engine. And it's generally true if you're talking highway interceptors and stuff. But the weird thing is, on that show, the producers decided to get an American Motors cop car, and the wee hours, the guy pulls the hood open and starts pulling the engine out. And I swear, I've seen this, and you will too if you watch the show on YouTube. Out comes a 426 Hemi, the big valve covers, the spark plug wires, and out of an AMC cop car. But it made the Willis a Hemi-powered Willis, and that was kind of part of the thing. But it just goes to show that sometimes when Hollywood produces automotive TV shows, wink, wink, they're not always on target. But if you get a chance, check out not Adam 12, but Hot Rod, the movie Hot Rod, or again, Small Town in Texas was another name for it when it reran in the wee hours of the night in the late 70s, early 80s. Okay, let's move on to so AMX trivia with fact 855. Rumors persist that every 1968 through 70 AMX started life as a full-size Javelin body shell. Once assembled, a 12-inch chunk was then sliced from behind the front seats on a specialized modification line. This is not true. Though AMC worked with a much smaller budget than its Detroit competitors, this level of hand fabrication would have been far too costly. The fact is, AMC body engineers designed a specific body shell for the two-seat AMX. Thus, two-seat AMXs, which ride on a 97-inch wheelbase, and five-seat Javelins, which have a 109-inch wheelbase, employ dedicated body shells that travel down the same Kenosha, Wisconsin assembly line on their way toward final completion as finished automobiles, which kind of brings us to the Audi Sport Quattro of the mid-1980s. I believe those cars started life as actual Audi two-door long wheelbase cars, and then they were sliced and diced and turned into two-seaters. That kind of handwork, again, it was something that was done to homologate those things for the rally circuit in Europe, the Killer Bees, the Group B rally cars. But anyway, back in the 60s, American Motors did not slice and dice Javelins to shorten them up. That's kind of a wives' tale. But indeed, Kenosha AMC had enough budget to have dedicated bodies for the short Javelin, or the short AMX and the longer Javelin. From the cowl forward, they're the same. But with that said, yeah, they have different shells. And the thing is, the two-seat Javelin AMX is a very rare car then or now. Getting parts for those things is tough, especially the hood. Okay. Let's keep moving here. This is fact 856, and it involves where AMC engines came from. Okay, question. Did Chevrolet secretly make engines for Rambler or AMC passenger cars? This bit of confusion stems from the fact that both manufacturers use the same 327 cubic inch displacement, but that's all they have in common. The Chevy 327 of 1962 through 69 was the product of a 4-inch bore and a 3¼ inch stroke. The AMC 327 of 1956 through 1966 shared the same 4-inch by 3¼ inch internal dimensions, but is of much heftier construction and no parts interchange. Yeah, it's true, the AMC 327, which was also available with as small as 250 cubic inches, and I think there was also a 287 in the middle there. But the AMC 327 is it's unique beast, and you can find them in Jeep Wagoneers in the mid-60s, but largely they were found in full-sized AMC Rebels and cars like that back in the late 50s up till 66. But again, 327 is all they share, the cubic inches. Otherwise, gas, air, and water are common, but that's about it. Okay, moving on to more American Motors V8 controversy with fact 857. Similarly, rumors hold that AMC purchased the obsolete first-generation Buick nailhead V8 tooling and used it to construct the 1971 401 V8. Again, the Buick 401, which was made from 1959 through 1966, was an entirely different design and nothing interchanges except for, again, oil, coolant, and gasoline. Helping to fuel the confusion is the fact that Kaiser, the parent company of Jeep, sourced Buick-built second-generation 350s for use in Jeep Wagoneers from 1968 through 1971. When American Motors, AMC, bought Kaiser Jeep in 1970, a top priority was replacing the Buick 350 with the AMC 360. But again, since both engine families coincidentally share a front-mounted distributor, that is the Buick 350 and the AMC 360, conspiracy theorists assume collusion where there is none. Yeah, it's interesting. Cubic inches expressed in the engine size often show up on external emblems, on front fenders, on air cleaner decals and stuff like that. But just because you see the same number, 401, on a Buick or an AMC doesn't mean they're the same engine. They can be very different critters. Okay, let's go into the world of Pacers, the AMC Pacer, with fact number 858. And interestingly enough, by the way, today is, March 8th, 2022. And about a month ago at Barrett-Jackson Scottsdale, the Wayne's World Pacer, the actual light blue car from the Wayne's World movie franchise, sold at Barrett-Jackson, I think for like $70,000, something like that, which is probably a world record for the Pacer. But anyway, here's some data on AMC Pacer engines, fact number 858. The Pacer arrived in 1975 with a choice of 232.6 or 258 cubic inch six-cylinder power. Again, six-cylinder only. But for 1978, the 130 horsepower 304 two-barrel V8 was added to the option sheet. If you happen to see a V8 Pacer, remember, only 3,528 of the 279,094 Pacers made was a V8. Again, about 3,500 out of 279,000 cars. So V8 Pacers, very rare. Okay, that's about 1 in 80. Verification of a V8 Pacer is easy. Just look for an H in the 7th digit of the VIN. The V8 necessitated a restyled grille and bulged hood. Details also applied to six-cylinder cars. Randall Rambler in Mesa, Arizona saw enough potential to stuff 401 V8s onto the Pacer's pancake hood, thus creating a small fleet of Pacer 401 XR muscle machines, which followed on the heels of the Randall Rambler Gremlin 401 XR of 1972 through 74. About 20 Gremlins got the 401 swap, but the quantity of Pacer 401s is unknown. Now it's true, we talk about AMC 304s in the Pacer from the factory. The 401 was the same family as the 304, as was something called the 360 and the 390. But again, the 401 is something that was never installed in a Pacer, at least not by American Motors. But yes, Randall Rambler made at least one of them. Okay, fact number 859, let's talk about the management of American Motors and something kind of controversial. Again, fact 859. Did AMC President George Romney really say that? In an unfortunate confirmation of just how out of touch Romney's management team was with the predominant market trends, in 1964, the dignified executive proclaimed, quote, "The only race Rambler cares about is the human race," end quote. Further proof of Kenosha's stubborn anti-high-performance stance was displayed in a full-page 1964 magazine ad depicting blurred images of non-AMC stock cars running in close formation on a NASCAR track. The magazine ad copy read, quote, "Out of its proper place, racing is deadly. Yet there are those who glamorize and advertise racetrack speeds in order to sell cars. This is not in the public interest and Rambler will have no part of it," end quote. Romney, father of politician Mitt Romney, might as well have posted armed guards at Rambler dealerships, excluding access to thrill-seeking baby boomers. It's true, again, AMC said the only race we care about is the human race. In other words, drag racing, NASCAR, road race, all that stuff. AMC absolutely stood out. They were actually militant in their anti-race stance. And again, speeding and crashes and stuff like that, they associated with high-performance cars, which is debatable. There's nothing more dangerous in my eyes than a really slow car. I drove a Ford Pinto with an automatic and a 2.3 in Los Angeles traffic, and I was always a danger at intersections trying to accelerate away at a stoplight at a normal pace while vehicles were just piling up behind me. And so a slow car is as bad as a fast car in terms of the safety thing. So anyway, yeah, it's true that Mitt Romney, his father, George, was very much anti-high performance. Well, of course, that would change. By 1967, AMC saw the writing on the wall, and of course, we got things like the AMX, the Machine, and a lot of cool stuff, but that's a little down the road. Okay, at this point, I do want to thank our sponsors, High Octane Classics here in Auburn, Massachusetts, located at 143 Washington Street. And again, I'm sitting here right now at High Octane Classics. Today is, I think, this is March 8th, 2022. This is a 2018 Dodge Demon. I was born in 1964, and by 1984, I'm 20 years old, and it was a big deal when the Ford Mustang went from a two-barrel to a four-barrel carburetor, and we got, 175 horsepower. The Mustang then was capable of a 15 two-quarter miles, something like that, on a perfect situation with a 5-speed tranny. These things run 980s. This is a brand new car you can buy from a Dodge dealer, or you could, back in 2018. So it's an amazing thing that today's high-performance world is far more intense than it ever was back in the golden age of muscle cars. But to buy either a classic or a modern vehicle like this, High Octane Classics has you covered. You can give them a call at 508-859-4515. Buy yourself a Demon. Okay, let's get back to the 1001 Muscle Car Facts, continuing here with American Motors legend and lore. Fact number 860. Here we go. Okay, this is where AMC gets religion, so to speak, and says, this performance thing, we should pay attention. Okay, after watching the youth market run in the opposite direction for 3 years, Rambler embraced high performance and coughed up a cool $1 million to fund the 1967 Grant Rebel SST fuel funny car. Built by Michigan racers Dave Jeffers and Bonsai Bill Hayes, with assistance from piston ring giant Grant Industries and American Motors, the state-of-the-art flip-top fueler was based on a Logie Brothers style tube frame. It was covered by a fiberglass replica of the restyled 1967 Rebel body shell, which was made using a pilot production Rebel hardtop borrowed from an AMC executive. Best of all, power came from a true AMC V8. The 438 cubic inch 671 GMC supercharged mill was based on 343 AMC V8 with the stroke increase from 3.28 to 3.75 inches, about a half an inch, and topped by ported 343 iron cylinder heads. With 1,200 horsepower, it ran a best of 8.11 seconds at 180.85 miles per hour with Hayden Profit at the wheel. And that's the thing, by 1967, the flip-top funny car was in its second year. Of course, 1966, the Mercury Comet Cyclones kind of revolutionized funny car racing, rendering the altered wheelbase Mopars of 1965 obsolete. But for 67, everybody got on the flip-top funny car bandwagon, including AMC. And in fact, if you Google Grant's piston Rebel funny car, you'll see a red, white, and blue AMC Rebel that looks pretty good, pretty modern. And that was the beginning of American Motors drag racing efforts on the national scene. Okay, moving on to fact 861. Other high-profile AMC drag cars of the 1960s included Preston Hanea's altered wheelbase 1965 Bill Craft Rambler Marlin match racer and Doug Thorley's fiberglass 1968 Javelin fuel funny car. Though appealing, both cars annoyed hardcore AMC stalwarts with their Chrysler Hemi power plants. Hanea's 957, 139 mile per hour Marlin was motivated by a Hillborn injected 426 Mopar Hemi, while Thorley's innovative Javelin 1 flip-top funny car, and it was innovative because the body hinged at the front instead of the rear, that employed a GMC supercharged Chrysler 392 Hemi, an old-style Hemi. Hanea's Marlin confused newbies with its cast aluminum rocker covers, which were engraved with Rambler Marlin logos. It wasn't the first case of tricky wordplay. The cast aluminum rocker covers on the GMC supercharged Chrysler 392 Hemi in Lou Arrington's Brutus altered wheelbase Pontiac GTO were engraved with Hemi Pontiac. I'm guessing nobody was fooled. In fact, here's a picture right here of Preston Hanea's altered wheelbase Marlin right there. And that car was fairly popular. Again, it was a steel Marlin body. They hastily moved the rear axle forward, just like Chrysler did in 1965, and then added a flip top or a flip funny car nose. The entire fenders and hood were molded in one piece, like a gasser. But it had a Hemi, a Chrysler Hemi, a 426. So nobody was fooled. But that car, bright red, was featured in a lot of magazines and definitely helped the American Motors performance image with the baby boomers of that time, who were definitely in the majority in buying cars. And they always say that you can always sell an old or a young man's car to an old man, but you'll never sell an old man's car to a young man. In other words, performance sells then or now. Look at this demon, crazy. All right, let's get on to fact 862. AMC engine fans were dealt a sweet reward with the 1970s. In the 1970s, thanks to a string of highly competitive Gremlin and Hornet machines raced in NHRA Pro Stock drag racing action. Spearheaded by the efforts of Wally Booth, the second generation 290 through 401 based engine architecture proved itself valid as a threat to anything appearing in the opposite lane, including the small block Chevy, Cleveland head Ford small block, and even the Hemi in D-stroked form. Booth's Hornet set numerous national records and was no underdog, but it didn't end there. Records were also set in NASCAR and Trans Am competition, establishing the second generation AMC 290 through 401 engine as a potent design with lots of potential. It is true that if you look at any 1970 through 75 stock car racing magazine, you'll see those red, white, and blue Matadors, and they had 366 cubic inch AMC engines, and of course Pro Stock drag racing, again, red, white, and blue. You'll see Hornets and Gremlins with Wally Booth and a couple of other racers dominating and running really hard, running eights right next to the match racers, Hemi powered and otherwise. So the AMC V8 was not an underdog, or was not a dud, but it took a lot of work to make one work. A company called Traco used to take those cylinder heads, and Crane also would take those iron AMC heads and hog them out, port them huge. And they weren't production, but they were production based. So AMC was in there swinging too. with AMC engines. Okay, let's get into one of the first American Motors muscle cars, and maybe the first muscle car. It's arguable, but here we go. This is fact number 863. The limited production 1957 Rambler Rebel, of which 1,500 were built, may stand as the first muscle car, at least when the 64 Pontiac GTO's big engine in compact car recipe is the guiding light. Remember, the 1955 Chrysler C300 was a full-sized car, and while people call that the first muscle car, again, it was a big car. By contrast, the Rebel's 108-inch wheelbase, 191-inch overall length without the optional external spare tire, and 3,553-pound shipping weight were decidedly of the compact class. Throw in a standard solid cam dual exhaust 4-barrel 327 V8, heavy-duty suspension and brakes, exclusive platinum and gold body markings, and you've got a precursor to the mighty GTO, if you could ignore the four-door body style of the Rebel. A key element in the Rebel's performance was the standard 4:10 axle ratio when fitted with a 3-speed overdrive stick. Automatic-equipped Rebels, which were hydromatic GM transmissions, were fitted with a less thrilling 315-to-1 gear set. But it is true, 1957 was the year that the American Motors, the AMC Rebel, came out, 4-door only, but again, with 327 cubes, it was a big engine in a small car. And arguably, if that's the recipe of a muscle car, well, they beat the GTO to the market by, 7 years? Could be. That discussion is never going to be solved, but AMC guys say, yeah, the Rebel was one of the first muscle cars. You decide. Okay, moving along. Fact 864, let's talk about engines. Okay, like Chevrolet's strategy of creating fanfare by restricting... Oh, got a battery problem? Okay, all right, we're good. My tech guy, Shane Richardson, is helping here. We had a false alarm and a dead battery. It's all good. We'll keep going here. Okay, fact 864. Let me tidy this up a little bit. We're talking about limited production engines and how AMC followed Detroit's lead with creating thrills with limiting that stuff. Okay, fact 864. Like Chevrolet's strategy of creating fanfare by restricting availability of the new 350 small block exclusively to the Camaro SS 350 for the 1967 model year, the image-changing 290 and 390 engines by AMC made their respective debuts aboard limited production showcase models. The 290 V8 was exclusive to the 1966.5 Rambler American Rogue, of which 8,718 were built before going mainstream with the 1967 model year. 2 years later, the exciting 390 American Motors V8, which was a big brother to the 290, externally looked the same. But again, 2 years later, the exciting 390 was only available as the top engine option aboard the two-seat 1968.5 AMC AMX, of which 6,725 were built. American Motors so wanted to capitalize on the groundbreaking AMX, when the production embargo was lifted in 1969, the 390 was still referred to as the AMX 390, whether it was installed in an Ambassador station wagon or an SC Rambler. So it is true, it's a good idea amongst Detroit car makers to introduce a new engine aboard a Halo model before making it standard in a pickup truck. And that's the case. In 66.5, the Rogue introduced the 290, and in 1968.5, the AMX introduced the 390. Pretty cool. Marketing, all about marketing. Okay, this is fact 865. Let's talk about Javelins and AMXs and their engines. Again, fact 865. 1968 Javelin buyers were not given access to the 390 until after the February introduction of the AMX. The most potent engine offering for pre-AMX Javelins was the 280 horsepower 343 4-barrel. When the door finally opened, Javelin buyers paid an extra $273.40 for the 390's 315 horsepower and 425 foot-pounds of torque. Since it looked the same as a 290, sneaky Javelin street racers were known to swap the metal 390 quarter panel badges for 290 units for stoplight fun and games. But there's the story on that. Again, the 390, well, keep in mind, the AMX came along midway through 1968. The Javelin came along at the beginning of 68. So again, the two-door 5-seat Javelin arrived initially with 343 as the big engine, and when the AMX arrived halfway through the year, AMC said, okay, here's the 390, but first only in the AMX. If you wanted it in your Javelin, you paid an extra $273. Okay, let's move along to more 390 AMC legend vehicle, the SC Rambler or Scrambler, you choose the name. Fact 866. The 390 powered 1969 SC Rambler or Scrambler, call it what you will, stands as American Motors' most brutal creation from a power to weight standpoint. But few are aware Rambler prepared a dress rehearsal of sorts with the 1967.5 Super American. Motivated by the 280 horsepower Typhoon 343, every Super American was equipped with a Carter AFB 4-barrel, Borg-Warner T10 4-speed manual transmission, twin grip differential, power disc brakes, and Redline bias-blind tires mounted on 14 by 5.5-inch steel wheels. Best of all, the engine and transmission package was offered in any American body style except station wagons. And yes, I get chills imagining a gloss black 4-door rated elite sedan with rubber floor mats spinning its Redline tires in front of a shocked Chevelle SS 396 driver. It's true, it's often unspoken of, but the Super American 1967.5 was the 343 in the little tiny Rambler American. And yes, you could get a 4-door if you wanted that, but no wagons. And, okay, so we'll keep going. We have another 4 facts to go. We're going to touch down here on the end of legend and lore in a couple of seconds here. Fact 867, as cool as the Super American was, it kept an ugly performance choking secret: single exhaust. That's right, like the 66.5 American Rogue with its 225 horse, 294 barrel, the rev-happy 343 V8 in the Super American was forced to exhale through a single exhaust system. Speculation abounds that AMC intentionally sought to dull performance since the package was much more potent than anything that had come before. It is a fact that until you get to the 1969 SC Rambler with its 390, all Rambler Americans had single exhaust, even the Super with its 343 and the Rogue with its 290. But finally, in 1969, the SC Rambler or Scrambler got a full-length dual exhaust with glass packs in most states. So for whatever reasons, the single exhaust was the standard until you finally get to the 69 Scrambler. Kind of weird. You can bet, though, that 99.9% of all Rogue and Super Rambler or Super American owners put headers and dual exhaust on their cars to free up another 10, 20 horsepower. The single exhaust system is quieter, but it's also pretty restrictive. Okay, let's move into fact 868, and this is police car stuff. Okay, long before the 1979 arrival of the Camaro Z28 CHP, California Highway Patrol police cars, and the 1982 Mustang Special Service Package, SSP, AMC answered law enforcement pleas for a fast highway interceptor with the 1971 Fleet Service Javelin. Unlike the 79 CHP Camaro Z28 program, with a mere 12 evaluation cars, large volumes of 401-powered Javelins, not AMXs, were produced in 1971 and 72. The Alabama Department of Public Safety alone bought 132 of these 401 Javelins, plus a non-fleet 401 AMX test car. Other agencies using 401 Javelins included the town of Muskego, Wisconsin, and the Georgia State Police, which evaluated 2 units. About 16 Alabama State Police 401 Javelins are known to survive to this day. One is on display at the International Motorsports Hall of Fame and Museum on the grounds of the Talladega, Alabama Super Speedway. And it's true, they've kind of made a wave in the last 10 years or so in magazines like Hemmings Muscle Machines, Muscle Car Review, even Hot Rod wrote about these things. But again, 71 and 72, 401 Javelin fleet service cars, which had steel wheels, no stripes, nothing like that, fiberglass hoods, cold air. But again, they were cop cars, masquerading as just regular cars, and they were great highway interceptors because they didn't look like much, but they'd sneak up on you, write you a ticket in your GTO before you knew it. All right, let us now move on to fact 869. We'll talk about Dick Teague again, the stylist for American Motors. When the restyled 1968 Corvette was introduced, AMC styling chief Dick Teague wasted no time buying one from a local Chevrolet dealership in Detroit. Its first visit was to the Advanced Styling Studio, American Motors, on Plymouth Road, where American Motors' body design team swarmed over its many compound curves. One look at the second generation 1971 through 74 Javelin's arched front and rear fender lines proves they studied that Corvette very well. Such acts of plagiarism are not uncommon. The twin hood blisters on the 57 Corvette were lifted directly off the Mercedes 300 SL, and it's no secret the 1970 Dodge Challenger's lines aped those of the 1969 Camaro. After all, imitation is the most sincere form of flattery. Yeah, it's true. Dick Teague, in many cases, automakers would do something called benchmarking, which is where the engineers and stylists and marketing people will buy the competition's vehicle, bring it to their labs, take it apart, and benchmark it so they can use that as the standard to make their offering better. Okay, let's move along to our final fact here in this particular episode, which is show 62. And here we go here. This is fact 870, bringing to a close legend and lore in the realm of American motors. Okay, fact 870. Like Area 51 and Studio 54, AMC's Group 19 Performance Parts section has been clouded in mystery. Group 19 was simply the 19th of the AMC Master Parts catalog's 28 sections and is where dealer-installed high-performance equipment was offered. Similar to competing programs such as the muscle cars, Ford, Hustle Stuff, Dodge, and others, goodies included Edelbrock intake manifolds, crane cams and valve train parts, Mallory dual point distributors, Trendsetter faux side pipes, Lowe high numeric gear sets, and more. Though assigned official AMC part numbers, most items were manufactured by outside vendors. So that's the story of AMC's Group 19. In many cases, if you look on eBay, you'll see people selling Group 19 chin spoilers, Group 19 trunk spoilers, Group 19 this, that, and the other thing. And that's sort of like, again, it's American Motors parts catalog. Group 19 was all about where they sold the hot rod stuff. And unlike Ford and Chrysler and General Motors, many of AMC's high performance goodies were sourced from companies like Schaefer, Edelbrock, etc., because they just didn't have the budget to make their own stuff. So, okay, that brings up the close to this first subpart of the American Motors chapter of Steve Leonti's 1001 Muscle Car Facts. That's legend and lore. For show number 63, which will be our next show, we're going to move into body and interior. So you want to join us for that coming up in the next audio or video. But before that happens, I want to thank our sponsors here at High Octane Classics in Auburn, Massachusetts, located at 143 Washington Street in Auburn, Massachusetts. And the number here is 508-859-4515. And this is an active dealership. You can see there's folks walking around. This is the pulse of this place, buying and selling cars. And if you have a car you want to sell, preferably a custom or hot rod or a special interest car, the folks here at High Octane Classics want to hear about it. Thanks for watching and listening to the Steve Maggs Muscle Car Show podcast. We'll be back with more.